in that role, we also provided design loads to our durability facility to drive their tests, because we can't, for all the durability tests we want to run, we can't just run a bunch of cars hundreds of thousands of miles. We have to find a way to accelerate that. And so that's what the purpose of these roles was I would take one run, and then they would send it to the durability lab and multiply it many, many times over. So Kody, I actually have a video of one of those tests that's public information. If you click the next slide, it should play.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, or not.
Yeah, is it this web link here?
Yeah, if you want to go to that, that's fine.
Yeah. It might not be working as well with the combined slides, but
so what this is, if you want to skip to maybe about a minute in, Kody, that would probably be better.
yeah, this is actually a really cool test that gets ran. I'll skip that.
So what they do with this test is they match the loads that we predict at the wheels, and then tune it in and basically shake the car around a bunch, really, is what it is. But what they're doing here is they're trying to simulate what it's like to actually drive this car on the road for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles. And, you know, they'll do all kinds of things like we have rough roads that we run. We have turning events that we run. Basically, everything a normal car would see gets replicated on this machine. So I think that's good enough, Kody. We can go to my next slide. This is a long video. I don't want to show the whole thing. So that's what I did in my past. Currently, I'm a validation engineer for bumper, fascia, grille, and exterior trim. And what that boils down to is really, me and my manager call it all the jewelry on the car. Basically everything that makes you want to buy it, from the emblems, the nameplates, to the rockers and body moldings, and especially the styling of the front fascia. The programs that I was responsible for are the Cadillac CT5 and CT4. Those have launched. And then now I'm also starting on the Cruise Origin, which is a fully autonomous vehicle that's going to be operating out of San Francisco. In validation, our responsibilities start early in the development process, oftentimes before our design is even finalized. We submit development plans very early to our suppliers and test plans to start getting them thinking about how we're going to test these parts. We also provide input throughout the design phase on potential failure modes we may expect to see and things like that. Once we actually have parts in hand, we send them to various facilities, and we also perform tests on them ourselves. Any failures, I'm responsible for root causing them. And then I'm also responsible for making sure that our bumper, fascia, and grille subsystems meet federal and state regulations for bumper impact testing and tests like that. Finally, at the end, my job is done on a program once I've submitted all my test reports for all the components.
Yeah, cool. Let's go ahead and bring on Diego next.
Okay, hi. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, okay, cool. It's great to see a lot of familiar names. I see a lot of you from previous classes, so it's really nice to say hi and, you know, quote unquote, see you, considering I just graduated in this past May. But yeah, so here's pretty much my road to automotive. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Diego Ruggiero. I graduated in 2018 with my Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and in 2020 with my Master of Science in engineering with the mechanical engineering option. How I got into automotive was more or less initially started with Tesla. When I came in, or Tesla came in, actually in an alumni, his name was Will Reynolds. He came in to recruit, and I got into contact with him. And after 4 rounds of interviews, I made it onto the team over in Lathrop as well as Fremont. I was an equipment engineer there, where I predominantly did a lot of mechanical design work for either Fanuc or KUKA manufacturing robots, like designing tooling or integrating the pneumatics or the electrical hardware, the PLCs, into the robots, as well as other sorts of manufacturing equipment for either die casts or stamping, or even just any other sort of cell where they assemble or make any other part for the vehicle, specifically within the Model S and Model X for me. That was a 6-month internship, go beyond that now, and the way I got into General Motors was through a SWE conference in November of 2019, I believe. And I interviewed there, had my first initial interview. What initially drew me to GM was the 0-0 initiative, the 0 emissions, 0 crashes, and 0 congestion. And I asked immediately about what that meant to the company, how they were implementing that at the time, and I was immediately hooked. So I had 2 rounds of interviews, in December through Skype. And next thing I knew, I had my interviews early December, and then by mid-December, I had gotten the offer. So just like you heard from both Kody and Henry, I am a track engineer currently. I am in my very first rotation, so I don't have as much of a history like the other panelists do, but my first rotation is working for the Vehicle Intelligence Platform, formerly known as what's called the Global B Electrical Architecture, and I'm a software integration engineer. So Kody, we can go ahead and move to the next slide. Thank you. So the Global B Electrical Architecture is, put simply, an architecture that lets controllers, modules really speak to each other intelligently in a way that allows us to get an idea of what the vehicle's doing, where the vehicle is, how each module or controller is communicating with other controllers or modules. This new architecture allows us to also deal with over-the-air updates, right? So, the age of wires is, I don't want to say coming to an end, but everything is going wireless, and GM is staying competitive by implementing initiatives such as Global B. So what exactly do I do? So if we go down the list here, I root cause software issues within controllers. There are a lot of different communication issues that can happen. Certain error codes can come up. Obviously, you want to fix these as quickly as possible. Right now, because our group is so new, I find myself creating a lot of custom tools to make work more efficient, not only for myself, but for my team, right? So I can design PCBs to automate certain processes, Python scripts, like web apps, or maybe even use them with other proprietary software in conjunction, and other electrical hardware, like, for example, certain breakouts or wires that would allow us to communicate to the vehicle, and all that is done in-house. I've learned I deal a lot with different communication protocols such as CAN, LIN, Ethernet. I also deal with a lot of specific features of the vehicle. So think of a feature as anything like rear view camera, or if you're looking at one of our higher end vehicles like the Escalade, then it's going to have an augmented reality camera in the front, things like that. That's more or less what's in my day-to-day. I'm very lucky. I work in Milford, in the Milford Proving Ground, and I get to go to work. I consider myself very lucky in that sense. Currently, I'm assisting the Escalade launch over here in Texas, so that's where I'm at currently, and I'm having a lot of fun here. But yeah, so if anybody has any questions about what I do as far as dealing with software or even electrical hardware, please feel free to ask during the Q&A.
Hey, all right, so I'm Jessica Gartrell. Some of you may have known me. I've done a couple panels before for SWE, but I graduated in 2017, so been out for 3 years now, but I just want to go over some of the things I've done during school and then since then. So first, as we mentioned before, I was in the honors program, so that was a big part of why I chose Fresno State. I was also really involved in the Society of Women Engineers and Bulldog Racing. So those really helped with leadership roles and things like that help get jobs for you and leadership experience that companies recognize. Another thing, I did independent study and research for a couple years with Dr. Law. So that helped me specialize in aerodynamics and was really a key factor that helped me get to GM as well. In school, so between my I think sophomore and junior year, I had an internship with Northrop Grumman. And that was up in the, Silicon Valley area, building military communication satellites. So for that, I just kind of wrote, I took drawings and translated them into build procedures. Since then, the next summer, before I graduated, I did aerodynamic work. So this was exactly what I'd been working for with all my schoolwork, and I got my dream internship. And so I went out to GM in Michigan for 3 months. Did my internship, fell in love, and they gave me a return offer and I immediately accepted. So that was kind of a great feeling going into senior year. Other things I did since then, I did a research publication before I graduated on the same research I did with Dr. Law. And then, like I said, I graduated Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. So full-time, after I graduated, I went back to the aerodynamics group and did 1 year there, working on mainly full-size trucks. So that role really involved a lot of wind tunnel testing, prepping for wind tunnel testing, taking your results, communicating them to the team, telling them why you need all of this. Because ultimately aerodynamics enables the miles per gallon on your vehicle. It brings it down and brings down our greenhouse gas emissions. So it was really important for compliance. The second year, so these first 2 years were rotations. The second year, I went into wind noise development. So it started off as a noise and vibration role, but after they learned I was in aerodynamics, they kind of lumped me back into wind noise. So I was back in the wind tunnel for another year. And kind of the same work as aerodynamics, but it's more subjective and customer facing, which was a real good challenge for me because it wasn't you get a number and you can easily communicate that. You have to be able to subjective and tell them whether you need a change or not, or whether the change worked. So that was an interesting exercise. Also, after that, so once I graduated from what we called the track program for 2 years, I went into a design release role. So that's kind of like a project manager for a family of parts. And I actually worked somewhat alongside Henry on the same CT4 and CT5. So I did releasing powertrain cooling components, but I had interfaced with his fascia at one point. So we had a lot of discussions making sure things that I was changing weren't going to affect the crash tests that he was running and things like that. So that was a fun role. And then shortly before the 4th of July, I kind of surprise jump ship, and I'm now working for GM Defense. So it's kind of a lesser known group of GM. It's like a separate corporation within the company, but so I actually work for the military again now. And if you go to the next slide, there's some more pictures on the cool vehicle we're working on. Yeah, so the contract that we were just awarded, again, around the 4th of July was the infantry squad vehicle. So if this looks a little familiar, it's based off of the Chevy Colorado, and we just strip it down. It's basically meant to transport troops. So it's a pretty cool thing. I didn't even know when I first came on, but they literally pick this up and put it inside a plane, or they transport it by helicopter. So it's kind of interesting to your requirements are, making sure that you can drop it from a plane. Like that's a pretty cool thing to be working on. So, and 90% of the parts are off the shelf. So that's why it's a really promising program for the military as we work in the future. So GM Defense, there's a lot of different programs coming up, and there's always things on the horizon, but this is the really cool, starting point that we're working with right now. So it's exciting to be, because GM Defense is almost like a little startup within GM. So it's an interesting group, and I have the same responsibilities that I did in design release before. It's just on military parts. So, yep.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's really sweet. So this is myself. I'm Kody Martinez. I graduated in 2015 from Fresno State. My path to GM in the summers in college, I interned with another OEM, Honda, out in Ohio, doing like a various work, some manufacturing, some R&D. But leaving Fresno State, I was given an offer through SHIP in the winter, I guess you could say, fall, winter of 2014. And then right after graduation, joined and moved out to Michigan, and it's been here for just over 5 years, and it's been great. So I started out as a driveline development engineer, and in that space, worked in Milford on like all-wheel drive systems, a lot with the launch of the new Buick LaCrosse at the time. It was really fun space to be at, working with clutch all-wheel drive systems, doing development, finding trouble, issues in the field, and then trying to replicate that same issue. So driving around until something fails, and then replicating that and trying to, push a solution to the design engineers. After that, I was in a track rotation, and I rotated into a design release role in that space. Worked on the ZR2, started as a Colorado, and then I developed the axles and the front axle and rear axle for the ZR2. It has some really sweet electronic lockers, and it's a super fun vehicle. And as Jessica said, that vehicle then got used as a platform for this military contract that we're currently working on. So a lot of cool applications where you can see your product grow and develop into such other cool things. From there, I went and got some experience in the electrical space at a manufacturing plant in Michigan, and it was really crazy. The electric vehicle, the Bolt, has just so much wiring. It's like just the Bolt alone is like 100-pound electrical harness, and there's just so much going on with it. And so as an electrical quality engineer, you really have to be on top of all the issues that are going on and making sure that we delivering quality vehicles to everyone who is purchasing, and because how important that is to get a trouble-free vehicle. And so that's part of that role. Leaving the track space, I went back to Milford and was a noise vibration performance engineer, doing work on the dynometer. And here we can see in that photo there, it's a dyno that is in an anechoic chamber. It's a really cool space. As you can imagine, with the anechoic chamber, it's much quieter because the noise is damped from the walls. So we're able to really tune the performance of the vehicles. And so guys like the new Corvette that got released, things like that, and tuning the way it sounds, the way the customer experiences in the vehicle and outside the vehicle, and then taking that from a test chamber through development onto the road at Milford and doing more work there. So it's really cool. And from there, I got approached, and we obviously I think around this time we started working more with Cruise with the Bolt, transforming that into an autonomous vehicle. And I was asked if I wanted to step into some of the autonomous space. And so I kind of poked around and with different managers, which is a really cool aspect to be able to do anywhere. But that seems to be kind of the way things go at GM, where if you want to go into a new space, you kind of just poke around and see hey, this is really cool. How do I get in this? I'm interested. And the more interested you are in something, the higher likely you'll move into that kind of space. And so I think I talked to maybe a dozen managers, and I found a group that I kind of like really kind of meshed with, and that was in the autonomous infotainment. And so now we're developing this the infotainment system without a driver, and it's pretty cool, and it's great to see the autonomous system grow. And yeah, so any questions on those things, just feel free to shoot them. And but up next is Kathryn.
I guess I should unmute myself. So hey guys, I'm Kathryn. I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree in 2017. And kind of like the others, I got my GM interview through a SWE conference. Prior to that, I was in the VIP program. I worked at Gusmer and International Paper. So GM was really interested in my manufacturing background. I didn't have any prior automotive experience. So it's kind of a weird pathway here. And like the others, I did do track, but my track was a little different. So I'm now in my 7th job at GM. So I had 6 rotations. And I've worked at 2 of the facilities here at GM. I'm currently in Milford Proving Ground, which is this giant test facility with every sort of test surface you could imagine. And then there's also the Pontiac facility where I worked on dynos and some other things. So my jobs here, I've been a quality engineer in the emissions lab. I've done CAE work on the crank train area, a lot of thermal work there. I worked on manual transmissions, development and validation. And then I got into propulsion systems, which is really high level. It's component requirements writing and DFMEA. And then I moved into calibration work on hybrid optimization and driveline dynamics management. I worked in hardware in the loop simulation, so basically simulating the entire powertrain in Simulink and running different controllers with the software builds to debug issues. And then after track, I went back to calibration, and I currently work on hybrid vehicles as a stop-start calibrator. So if you want to go to my next slide. So this is kind of calibration in a nutshell. So what I work on is the most annoying feature to most drivers. It's that auto stop. So when your vehicle comes to a stop and your engine turns off, that's me. However, mine's hybrid, so it's much better, and most customers don't even know that their engine has turned off or that it has restarted. The most I can say about what I work on is they are greener SUVs for China, so you unfortunately will not see anything I work on here in North America. But basically, vehicle and propulsion requirements are written way ahead of time, and then we go through a software development period for the controls, and then I kind of work on that area after the controls development where I get in a vehicle, I hook up to the controllers, and I get into most situations a vehicle would be in. We go out to Death Valley in the summer, we go up to Canada in the winter, we go out to Colorado to the altitude, and I make sure that my features meet all of the requirements under every condition. So at the end, the customer's happy. So it's a lot of vehicle work. I'm almost rarely at a desk unless I'm doing data analysis or taking a meeting. So that was one of my favorite jobs through all of my rotations. I really like to be hands-on, kind of troubleshooting rather than sitting at a desk. So if you have any questions about any of my long list of random jobs throughout GM, go ahead and drop a question. And then, all right, Kody, I'll get back to you now.
Cool. And then one thing I wanted to kind of bring in, not on us, but GM in general, as we might have mentioned, we have that 000 goal. I think Diego may have mentioned it, and 0 crashes, 0 congestion, and 0 emissions. And right now, this week at GM is Safety Week, and this is like the latest data on some of the, I guess, impacts of what we have done. So in improving, 0 crashes, you can see the reduction in impacts from the various types of crashes that happen because of the technology we're working on and putting in vehicles. And just the reason why I want to point this out is because, all these things, like it's a percentage, and it's not 100% yet, but every improvement we do is a life saved. It's not potentially a life saved, it's definitely a life saved for a lot of these types of crashes, and it's damage to vehicles and things like that. So that's super impactful. And it's really important to me, and I think it's important to all of us. And that's just kind of when you start seeing the results of our work. So yeah, that's it. If you guys are interested in learning more, ask us. You can go to our website to look at the jobs. I know there's a lot of internships available right now, and a lot of new entries into this track rotation. We can talk about any of that. So I think Carlos, if there's what questions are available.
Yeah, there's some questions that were directed towards Diego. They're like, the answers at state do you think contribute towards your field of study the most? I don't know if you want me to read them off all to you, Diego, or one by one.
Let's do one by one. That way I can focus on each one. So I just popped it up here. So is it the one from Mateo?
Yeah, Mateo. Which class
Okay.
contributed the most to you?
Yeah, so for my role specifically as a software integration engineer, I find that, to be completely honest, it's the class we've all dreaded, right? Into our senior year, the one that comes with the 10 units of work, but only 1 unit of credit, ME 159. That lab, I promise you, is extremely beneficial, especially with data acquisition. I do a lot of data acquisition, and then I do a lot of processing in Python, and then that involves a little more math. But being able to look at your system, whatever it may be, and not looking at something feature specific, right? Because one of the problems that a lot of engineers in general, but also, it's not like GM, it doesn't have these issues either, was integrating a system. You have your controllers, you have your inputs, and at the feature level, at the individual level, they work great, right? But at the system level, they don't cooperate. And looking at things systematically and getting your data systematically really contributes toward the feasibility of coming up with a solution. 159, when you're getting your data, you're dumping it in all in Excel, you're processing it, you're making it neat, clean, coming up with your conclusions, your graphs. I cannot stress enough how important 159 is when it comes, at least for my specific role in software integration. I do a lot of data processing. So, I guess to close it out, 159 is definitely a really good class. I guess also, when you use software, another good course is not necessarily ME related, but what was it? I think it's either ECE 71 or CSci 40. Correct me if I'm wrong. The C++ class or C, I think. I can't remember. I think it was C when I took it, but now it might be C++. Does that sound about right? Okay. Well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I find I've used a lot of, mostly I use Python for prototyping or for quick tool development. I don't necessarily use C or C++, even though it is faster, but you learn a lot of the good fundamentals in that course as far as structures and classes, and a lot of the things you can use in easier to learn, so to speak, languages, right? Like Python, so that you can quickly implement certain automotive tools that are made to automate certain processes. So a lot of the fundamentals that go into computer science, that are from computer science, that you learn in CSci 40 or ECE 71, I definitely find beneficial.
Hey Diego, I want to comment too because someone just asked me the same thing. So Jose, thinking back on it, I actually agree with Diego about ME 159. It was a great class. You really learned how to write a good technical report there. Same with all the senior design classes. For me, I would actually say that in terms of what was most important for my career, surprisingly, it was diffie-Qs and dynamics. I used those a lot in my first two roles. You don't hear that too often, but if I didn't have a good understanding of those courses, I wouldn't have been able to succeed in those roles very well. For my current role, I would say courses like Diego's mentioning, like ME 159, the senior design courses that teach you all the design process. Those are great for roles like validation as well as the engineering statistics course, which I think is ME 125, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that would be how I would answer that question.
And I'd also like to add on, ME 140 is the numerical analysis class using MATLAB. That's imperative too. You learn a lot of great fundamentals there that you can definitely bring into, I can only speak for myself, right? So roles such as mine, that class is extremely useful.
No, I agree 100%, Diego. I don't know how I completely forgot about ME 140.
So, Diego, they also asked you, how did you get more into the computer/electrical field, and how was the transition for you?
I guess that started before I was really in ME. I was always into electronics, that sort of thing. It really more or less started with my dad, right? So my dad he wasn't an engineer, but he was a satellite tech for DirecTV, and the man was able to get 20 extra channels just using some copper wire and an empty 2-liter bottle of Coke, right? So things like that, things you don't normally hear of like that, is really what brought me into being very hands-on like that. And so the way I got into it is more or less through personal projects. Like for example, I love tinkering with Arduinos. I deal with Arduino a lot now to automate certain processes. Like for example, if a test is done and if I'm not around, I'll program an Arduino combine it with a Raspberry Pi and have it send me an email, so to speak, right? To let me know that the test is over. Like just a simple example like that. Right now, so I live in an apartment on the 5th floor, and my AC unit is in the wall. And so there's no thermostat in my house. So I made a thermostat I'll be able, with which I can use with certain push buttons and actually introduce a feedback loop so that it turns off automatically now or turns on, right? So I've always been involved with those little tinkering around, things like that. ME 115 is a great class to get started on that. So that's more of like the electrical hardware. I think, was software also part of the other part of the question? I can't remember. Okay,
just how you used it in the field, and like, I guess you as a mechanical, how you got into that field.
It's just when I got the initial interview at the SWE conference in Anaheim, I let them know right off the bat that I wanted to be in the electrical space, autonomous space, software space, but I wasn't going in dry, right? I mean, I know very little, right? But I wasn't going in completely dry. I've done projects that revolve around MATLAB, that revolve around Python, C++ or C, and I've always loved dealing with the electrical space, the software space, and and that, right? So having a mechanical engineering degree just means I can add that much more to it, right? Because at its core, at my core anyway, I love the concept of robotics, right? And that's just mechatronics, the mixture of mechanical, electrical, and computer science, right? That's your tri-Venn diagram thing. And I just kind of did it out of, that's what I like to do. And over the years, I learned a little more. I started knowing nothing, and now if I need something, if I need something automated, or if I need something to just look cool, I can do it, right? And if I don't know how, there's a treasure trove of information on the internet and a large community that's always eager to help you and get started on those things. So for me, I guess, to circle back, it started with watching my dad with the electrical, deal with the electrical stuff, not in an engineering sense, but in a technician kind of sense. And then it just evolved from there.
Yeah, I was gonna mention it for those that are interested in automotive and interested in that software, but don't know where to start. There's a good book. It's called The Car Hacker's Handbook, and this is a good book for any veteran GM employee who maybe doesn't work in the CAN network space or anything like that. It's a really easy, quick read that gives you a breakdown into how to interject frames into a CAN signal, how to read CAN, and what the history is on it, and some of the things to get you to hack a car, pretty much. But it's a good book, easy read, and has a lot of detail. And as Diego said, Google, a lot of good information to search for things. So, yeah.
Thank you for your response, Diego and Kody. One question that I think is good for all the conference coming up, this anybody can answer it. It's what's your advice for landing an interview when going to the conference, either with GM or any company that anybody wants to apply to?
I think the big one is just prepping ahead of time. Like, going up to random employers and asking if they have positions doesn't really work. You kind of have to know what you're looking for, because if you have no idea, they'll just look at you like, okay, I have a list of 100 different positions I could put you in. You have to help us narrow it down a little bit to, like for me, I walked up and said I really wanted to work in aerodynamics. So they look down the list and they see there's an opening in the wind tunnel. So it was really important to kind of have a feel for what you want to do and at least know enough about the company that, you can look passionate about what they're going for. Like Diego said, knowing that the 000 campaign we have going on, that's a big trigger when you walk up to the booth. Knowing the most recent initiatives that the company has is really important to connect. So besides all of your technical experience and that stuff.
I'd also like to add on Jessica's answer. One of the things, what got me in the door with GM was when I went to the SWE conference, there was an option to upload your resume before the conference. And so I actually got a call before I had even left for the conference to interview at GM. And that was how I got in the door there. So if you have an opportunity to upload your resume early to any kind of website for a conference you're going to, you should absolutely do it. Companies use it to make early calls and schedule early interviews.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the interview slots are filled by the time the conference starts as well. So that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's a very true point, and this year is very unique. As you can see, a lot of us are virtual. A lot of the conferences are virtual. I know SHIP coming up is going to be virtual, and I help with the SHIP recruitment, and I wish I could give you some insight on that, but I'm still waiting to hear information on how the conference is going to be managed, and so it's going to be interesting this year. We're all kind of confused as well, but what else can you do than just take it for what it is and try your best and use all their advice like that. So.
Thank you for those answers. One of the questions was, how do you know GM was a right fit for you?
I think a big part of it is, for me, is culture. Like, even the small things, like I didn't know when I first started, was like, we don't wear, suits just for fun. Like, wearing jeans and a t-shirt at work is perfectly fine as long as you know how to do your job and get everything done on time. So things like that, they really support doing things like this, where you can, go and do panels in the middle of the day, or, go support conferences. And a lot of the soft things that aren't necessarily part of your job is really nice to have the support from the company. And they're always forward thinking as well. So there's always something new on the horizon, and they're very supportive if you want to try something else. It's usually pretty easy to move to a different position if you want to. So I've always liked the flexibility of the job.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, because no matter what job you go into, or if you transition from jobs, like, the work's gonna get done. Someone else may come in behind you and do it. And so it's the other aspects that you really need to be a value for you to stay around for, right? And at GM, like, there's a lot of that for me. There's and whatever initiative you want to run at GM is pretty much, you can do it, and there's gonna be people to support you. Like, the volunteer group here is like huge, and just so many other spaces that people just create. I'll just mention real quickly, a recent one that got generated from all the controversy going on right now across the US is an engineering-based inclusion group. And it's a bunch of engineers just coming together and trying to tackle, how do we make GM a more inclusive environment internally and externally. And from that, we're not sure how it's going to go, but there's a lot of people who are wanting to put in a lot of time and effort. So it's stuff like that just comes together because we're, a team. And I guess to mention something that I'm really proud of is the recent response that GM's had to the COVID. Overnight, we sourced every company to make all the parts for Vintex components. It was actually like 3 days over a weekend, and now they made that, and they're about to finish that project. And you can actually, as a GM employee, you can volunteer to make masks, and those get distributed at work and to other places as needed. So it's stuff like that. It's just like, it's really cool.
Thank you for your answers. There's also some other questions relating about GM. Like, do people feel like, do you have to be a car enthusiast, or do you have to be stuff about cars, like how to fix them, or knowledge, anything about cars, or can you just be like somebody who's never worked on cars and still land a job or an internship at GM?
I can answer this because I think most of you guys worked on Bulldog Racing at least. I knew almost nothing about cars coming into this, so a lot of you might feel the same way. I have learned so much about vehicles. GM actually has a really cool performance driving team, and I was able to actually do off-site competitions last year where you compete in autocross and you work on the vehicles. And most teams at GM are super willing to help you learn about cars. And then just working on them every day, you learn so much. So don't be turned off on working in automotive if you have no idea what goes on in a vehicle now. GM is always willing to help you learn, or I guess most automotive areas are as well.
Thank you. I have another question for Henry. I guess somebody interned in the PepsiCo company and is familiar with the Himmler cheese, and you want to compare those companies to GM. Just the working aspects.
Yeah, sure. So at Hillmark Cheese Company and Pepsi, I was more just doing shadowing a lot of engineers. With that being said, I personally am just not really suited to the manufacturing environment. I've always decided to get into engineering to be more on the design and testing side. So although I enjoyed my time there, I knew they weren't for me because that was really all they could offer me was manufacturing roles. The thing that I enjoy about GM is that you can do basically anything you want here. If you want to be in manufacturing, you can be a manufacturing engineer. If you want to be in design, you can be in design. If you want to be in testing, you can be in testing. So I would say that's why one of the reasons I like GM over working for those companies. Thank you.
Yeah, even in GM you can do manufacturing R&D. Like there's so much stuff you can do.
Thank you for your answers. Somebody wants to know about what GM offers employees. I think that's along with like benefits you get. I think that's what the question was asking for.
Yeah, I could rattle off some. I mean, from it all kind of varies, I guess. Actually, I think it's pretty fixed. From a vacation standpoint, you start with like 15 days of vacation, and then on top of that, there's like I don't know, like 16 holidays, and so it's a substantial amount compared to other companies. And I think after 2 years, it jumps up to 20 days of vacation. And the same amount of holidays, right? And I think during an election year, we get the voting day off too. So obviously GM finds that very important. So that's something to keep in mind. And then a lot of the other benefits you can see online. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on some of the other things that they find of value, the benefits, I guess. No sick days. I don't even think twice about when I'm feeling bad or something.
Yeah, that was something I learned early on. If you're sick, GM would rather have you stay home than get everyone else sick. And we see that a lot here too during the coronavirus pandemic. They sent everyone home to work, they send as many people to work from home as possible. So I wanted to comment on the vacation. You actually get 20 days, like 6 months after you get hired. It's ridiculous. When I joined in June, and then I got up to 20 days in January. So it's very quick. I also wanted to say one of the nice things that GM does, me and my wife had our first child about a year and a half ago. And one of the great things that GM does that not a lot of companies do is they actually offer 2 weeks paid time off for the father, in addition to whatever the mother can take off. So that's a great benefit as well that isn't often offered at other companies.
Thank you for your answers. I guess some people want to know about the programs in place for recent graduates, like the rotational. How many rotations do you get, and are you able to choose, or are you randomly selected in the rotation programs?
Yeah, so I don't think Diego's gone through this yet. So the 3 of us, Kody and Henry and I, probably are most recent. But usually what happens is there's like a list that goes out of all of the different jobs that are available at rotation time. And then you get with your manager, try to pick out, what you like the best. There's actually like a career fair internally that we do. And you network with other managers. You can reach out to different people that are in the job right now. So it's really similar to like going to a SUI conference. It's just internal. So it's a lot of, you get to rank what you want to do. And then from there, it just depends on the needs of the company and how many other people pick the same, top 3 as to whether you get the ones that you wanted. But I mean, for me, I got what I wanted the time that I rotated and at the graduation from the rotation program. So I've heard of varying different experiences with that, but that's, I think, still the program's the same way.
Okay, and I believe this is a question for Jessica. They asked her how she landed her internship at Northrop and how was it?
Yeah, so that all of our experiences were through conferences. So Northrop Grumman and GM for me were both at the SUI conference. And the only reason, so I really liked Northrop Grumman, but I wanted to get into aerodynamics. So that's really the only reason I didn't go back. I got to work at the Lockheed site with them, physically testing the satellites that we were working on. So that was really cool, hands-on testing, but I just really wanted to get into aerodynamics. And GM had the exact position I wanted, so I just decided to do Michigan instead.
Thank you. Some of them asked, how was it moving away from California, since you guys were all in California prior to being in Michigan? Was there a drastic change?
You have all 4 seasons here. So if you're tired of just summer, think about it.
Yeah, fresh air.
It's
That's a good
really,
start.
yeah. It's not bad in the winter either, as long as you have the equipment and clothes you need. Just don't go out in inappropriate clothing in the winter. And for the most part, unless there's a polar vortex, I find it pretty great. I don't mind shoveling snow every once in a while. So I know it's unpopular opinion. Everyone out here asks you why you moved too, so you have to get used to that. But I like it.
Yeah, fall's coming up right now, and it's about to be really nice with the leaves changing. That was the first time I've experienced that moving out here, was the leaves changing colors and everything like that. It's really awesome. You can Google it if you want to see some images of Michigan and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, when he says leaves changing color, we have trees everywhere. It's not a barren wasteland. So
it is green here a lot, yeah. Much more green.
Yeah, it's super green. But it's very flat also.
All right, it's already 1, so pretty much we're gonna wrap up this. I don't know if there's any last comments you guys wanted to say to people looking for jobs or heading to a career fairs. Any last advice?
I'd say just start looking now. There's nothing stopping you from, looking at, our website, not to plug it, but, there are openings out there. So apply, because you never know what's going to happen. Someplace, any place, they could tell you no, but at least you tried. So, and you don't know unless you do try. So just get your resume out there and just make as many contacts as you can. Also, I think we're going to try to see if maybe we can share our emails after this if there's other questions we didn't get to. So maybe there's a way to get to those.
Yeah, I think most of us are on LinkedIn as well, so you can reach out that way, and we can assist. I'll volunteer everyone. We can assist as much as we are knowledgeable in some of the, interviewing process or things like that, for whatever we might be able to help with.
Yeah, and I'd also like to say from just the questions that we got, a lot of you, it seems to me that a lot of you might seem to think that because you're an ME, you have to stick to an ME role. Because you're an EE, you have to stick to an EE role. If you're a computer engineer or a computer science, that you have to be a computer engineer or a computer scientist, right? I can't speak for other companies, but at GM, that's not the case. What's more important is how well can you learn? Can you apply things critically, right? Can you deal with ambiguity in projects? A lot of things are open-ended, right? And we're not looking for mechanical engineers or electrical engineers or computer engineers. We're looking for engineers in general, and how well you can apply what you learned into each scenario. If you know something, do it to the best of your ability. If you don't, learn it. And how quickly you can learn it, how efficient you can learn it. That's what we at least want to see. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, but just because you're an ME, don't think that you have to be within an ME role, or likewise EE, computer engineer, etc.
Yeah, I've been in the electrification space for 2 years now, and I'm a mechanical engineer, so you can adapt.
All right. Thank you everybody for the very good information, and hope to see you guys next year again for another webinar to help future students.
Yeah, cool. This was great. It'd be nice to see everyone's faces, but yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of the Lyles College of Engineering, we want to thank you once again. Great information. Want to thank all the audience. Thank you for joining us, and especially the panelists. Once again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules, to discuss such important topics with all of our students. You're great inspirations to many of our students. I know that they're aspiring to careers in the automotive industry, like many of you have, and we certainly look forward to connecting with you down the line in the near future. Thank you so much. All right. Have a great day.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
See you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.